This is about the lady that really wanted to get married, and so she said that she's just going to search all over to find the right guy, but she had some rules, and one of the rules that she had was, I can't marry anybody unless he's got at least $10,000 in the bank. That's the deal. Now, this is an old story, so we might change that number a little bit, but she said he's got to have at least $10,000. And so she starts to date this guy, and they really hit it off. And she says, look, here's the deal. I can't marry you unless you've got $10,000. Do you have $10,000? No, I don't have $10,000, but I'm willing to work on it. And she says, okay, that'll be fine. And so they continue to date. And after a little while, she decides that this is the one. I mean, I can actually see myself marrying this guy. I need to check in with him and see how he's doing in his savings. And so she does. She says, how are you doing? Are you working on that $10,000? Do you have it yet? And he says, I don't quite have it. I'm still working on it. Well, how much do you have? And he paused and he thought about it for just a moment. He's doing some calculations in his head. And he said, let's see, I've got $8.32. She said, that's close enough. And they went ahead and they got married. So she was really interested in marriage, wasn't she? And I appreciate your interest in this theme this year. And it sounds like you're spending a lot of time working through it. You have a book here that the Jenkins Institute put out, My Family, and I've been given a copy of this, and I look forward to going through this myself. And perhaps some lessons on that. Of course, your summer series on the family and things pertaining to the family. And I think we need more of that. And so I'm grateful that you have taken an interest in this particular area of concentration. So I'm supposed to talk about marriage, and I'm supposed to talk about the wife. I believe that there are some terms that we have allowed the world and we have allowed denominations to rob from us good biblical terms, and we've said, okay, since the world is using some terminology, we're going to avoid some terminology. I think about words like witness, even though Paul calls us to be a good and faithful witness, but we don't use that term witness because we're afraid of how people may think of us or look at us, right? May hold us suspect. I think about the word testimony. Well, that's a word that's used by various religious groups, and we don't want to be identified with them, and so we're going to abstain from using words like testimony. I think about meditation or mindfulness, and Paul says that there are a few things that you need to meditate upon. And then there's the word partner. And that's a word that we say, we don't want to use that. And you hear that word today, and it's like, are we talking about a business relationship? Are we talking about an intimate relationship between two people, maybe two people of the same sex, maybe not? But it's a word that I think we've allowed people to rob us of that is a good, healthy word when used appropriately. And so when we think about marriage, it is so much more than just what we call a sacred and holy covenant, which we should because it is. But it is a beautiful partnership when it's done correctly. And so I'm going to talk about the wife's side of the partnership. And I don't think this is fair, to be honest with you, because number one, I'm not a woman. Number two, I'm not a wife. And so I understand that this puts me at a little bit of a disadvantage, if you will. And so you may be sitting there as a woman and as a wife and thinking, how do you know what you're talking about? And I'm going to try to just stay on safe ground. And I'm going to share some things from the Bible, because I believe that's why I'm here. You want me to share some things from the Bible. But also, if you don't mind, I'm going to try to intertwine some psychology that helps to reinforce things that God has known long before we ever set foot on this earth. And so hopefully we will come away from our time together tonight having a greater appreciation of a God-honoring, emotionally healthy marriage relationship. Does that sound good? That's the plan. I also want to say this. I have the opportunity to go and share quite a bit on things pertaining to mental health. Just got back from speaking 20 times in New Zealand, and it was awesome. Loved it. I slept in 7 beds while I was over there for the last few weeks, and I've been able to talk about things pertaining to mental health all over the world now, and it's been a lot of fun. And what makes it even more fun for me is when I have your feedback. And so I don't want this to be a lecture, although I'm very prepared for that if needs be. But if you have a question or would just like to make a comment or want to say, Neil, you're wrong and here's why, please support your rationale for saying, Neil, you're wrong. But I welcome your feedback, okay? So let's start with that good, healthy, biblical foundation. I think if we'll go to Ephesians chapter 5, and I've got my Bible here, and I'm going to sort of go back and forth a little between the King James Version and the English Standard Version. I don't know what your version of choice is here, but if I go a little King James and a little ESV, maybe I'll hit everybody or both sides of the spectrum, so to speak. All of my memory work comes from the King James, so it's hard for me to break away from that. But I try to intersect the ESV and the New King James as well when I'm preaching. But if we go to the book of Ephesians chapter 5, verses 22 through 33 really provide us a good, I think, foundational text for understanding the dynamics within marriage. Look at verse number 21. Submitting yourselves one to another in the fear of God, wives. Submit yourselves unto your own husbands as unto the Lord, for the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, and he is the Savior of the body. Look at verse 25. Husbands, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it, that he might sanctify and cleanse it with the washing of the water by the word, that he can present it to himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that it should be holy and without blemish. And men, you ought to love your wives as your own bodies. And then you drop down to verse 33. Nevertheless, let every one of you in particular so love his wife, even as himself, and the wife see that she reverence her husband. And so from verse 22 through 33, you've got, again, this foundation of understanding of the various dynamics, we might say, of the marriage relationship, where wives are submitting to their own husbands as unto the Lord and respecting her husband. Now, I think we need to bring up that word. You know the word I'm talking about in this text, don't you? What's the word? Submit. Submission. And I see smiles and I see some rather, I won't say, kind of looks. So let me get you to provide some feedback here, if you're brave enough. What does the word submit mean? When he says, wives, submit to your own husbands, as unto the Lord, what does he mean when he says submit? Oh, I forgot to share this, by the way. So I'm a professor and a counselor. Awkward silence does not bother me, okay? So just in case you were wondering and you felt like you needed to rescue me from some awkward silence, no need for rescuing. Yes, sir. Okay, being faithful unto your wife. All right. We've broken the ice. Okay. 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 right, so if I could paraphrase what you said just in a phrase, because I think you hit on it 3 or 4 times. It's giving up something for your husband, right? Contextually. So it's giving up of yourself for someone else. That's the idea of submit. Good, I like that. Very good. Trust. Trust is a component of that. All right.
It says, like we do to the Lord.
Okay.
How we should do to the Lord is reverence, trust, following.
Okay.
All those things I think are encompassed.
Okay. So it's like unto the Lord. Trust is a component of that. Faithfulness is a component of that. Giving up something for somebody else. All of those things are a part of it. Submit. Yes.
I was going to say, I think humility is a part of that as well.
Yes.
I guess I could speak freely because my wife's in a class.
Well, hold on just a second. That could be dangerous. Oh.
But one of the biggest lessons I think we've learned in our own marriage is what submission actually looks like. My wife, recently we had a discussion, and I believe one thing, she believes another. But she says, I love you, and you're my husband, so I'm going to submit myself before you, and I'm going to follow your leadership. When she said that, it felt like somebody punched me in my chest. Because it puts the responsibility on you as the husband to take that position and take that role seriously. And that altered my mind so much that I then went to her what she thought was right, and that's what we went with.
Okay.
I think submissiveness is really, I think it speaks louder than words.
Okay. Wow. I'd love to have a conversation with you about this whole situation. So much good that I'm hearing there. It's really awesome. So what you're talking about is, your wife identifying your role as the head of your home, which I'm sure was discussed. I don't see the topics anymore, but I'm sure that was discussed last week to some degree. So your role as the head of the home, and because of that and her love for the Lord, she wants to submit herself to you and go with what it is that you said, even though, as you just identified, that wasn't her idea. But she was willing to submit to you because of that role, that differential role. Submit. So the word, and I don't use a lot of Greek when I'm teaching. It doesn't come in incredibly handy when you're teaching graduate students about clinical mental health, but occasionally it does. But submission is hupotasso. Hupo means under, tasso means to arrange, and so it's the idea of arranging yourself under. You mentioned the Lord. In Philippians chapter 2, let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. We call this the kenosis hymn. It's the self-emptying hymn. Let this mind be in you. The idea is give your mind a workout so that your mind becomes more like Jesus' mind. So let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal with God, made himself no reputation, and then may I just paraphrase, he willingly arranged himself under submission. He arranged himself under, gave up something of himself, as you said, arranged himself under the Father so that he would do his will, God's will, and not his, Jesus' own will. And if you read the book of John, is that not what John is primarily about? It's about Jesus giving up himself to come and do the will of his Father. And so when we think about this idea of submission, it suggests a voluntary yielding for the sake of unity. It's not coercion. It's not forced subservience. Biblical submission is humility. Talked about that. And it's this idea of not ignoring or doing away with one's wife's voice, certainly not taking away their value. It's not denying who they are spiritually, it is simply saying, from the wife's perspective, it is simply this idea of saying, look, I love the Lord more than I love you. And because I love the Lord most of all, and because the Lord said this, I'm going to arrange myself under you, and I'm going to therefore submit, not because I'm less than you, but I'm going to submit to you for the sake of faithfulness, but also for the sake of unity. You know, submission is a choice, isn't it? It's a choice made in love to prioritize that unity. You've heard it said, and maybe you've even said this before, well, I fell in love with my spouse, right? Go both ways. I fell in love with my wife. My wife's name is Emily. I fell in love with Emily. Or she may say, I fell in love with my husband. I fell in love with Neil. I personally don't like that terminology. I don't mean to take away from the emotional component of love, because it's certainly there. But what I want us to appreciate is that love is a choice. You know, because if you can fall in love, finish it, you can fall right out of it, okay? But I choose to love. And in the case of what we're talking about, I choose, wives, I choose to be in submission because I want harmony. I want unity. Now let me talk about the emotional component here, because this is a biblical foundation that I've just shared, but let me kind of touch on the emotional component as well. Ephesians 5 and verse 33 encapsulates what we would call a core issue in the marriage relationship. Let each one of you love his wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respect her husband. But this verse isn't just generic advice. But what Paul's talking about here is he's talking about a deeper emotional connection that's incredibly unique between a man and a woman. And it feels, if I can use that word, it feels different for each one. When I'm doing couples counseling, sometimes I'll recommend resources to them to read. And so in between sessions, they'll read a book, or maybe they'll read an article or something. And then we'll come back and we'll have some discussion about it. There's a fellow by the name of Dr. Emerson Eggerichs who wrote the book Love and Respect. Anybody familiar with that book, just offhand? Oh, we've got one? Oh, wow, we need a church house that's familiar with this book. This is a good book. I highly recommend it, okay? So far as I know, Dr. Eggerichs is not a member of the church, but he speaks from a Christian and biblical worldview, and I think you would find the content well worth your time. But in the book called Love and Respect, he says this: when a husband feels disrespected, it is especially hard to love his wife. Go back in your mind to what Paul said, husbands, love your wives. When a wife feels unloved, it is especially hard to respect her husband. What does this sound like to you? It sounds like the creation of a horrible cycle, emotional cycle, doesn't it? So, without feeling loved, a wife may react in ways that feel disrespectful to her husband. And without feeling respected, a husband may withdraw and therefore react in ways that feel unloving to his wife. Let me give you an illustration. So a wife is feeling rather overwhelmed, as wives often do, and says this: "You never help with the kids." Now you automatically know that a sentence that begins with "you never" or "you always," we're already on dangerous ground, right? So watch out. You never help with the kids. Therefore, you don't care about us. What do you think the husband hears? Any thoughts? What's the husband hear? Disrespect, no appreciation, no love, or I am a failure. I'm a failure. I'm a loser. I'm no good. And so what he's going to do then is he's just going to withdraw because he feels rejected. And then this is going to escalate her frustration. And now both of them are feeling wounded and they are feeling disconnected. But if a wife is making the choice, the conscious choice, to speak words of respect, even when respect is not deserved, we might say, particularly during a conflict, that can tap into a profound emotional need. You remember what Paul told the church at Colossae when he said, speaking with what? Grace. Sometimes husbands and wives will come in and we'll be talking and one of them has some pretty negative things to say about the other one and the other one in kind will have some pretty negative things to say as well. And maybe the challenge is, okay, I want you to work on saying something kind about your spouse. Well, if you could just really follow us around and listen to the way that he talks to me, then you would understand he doesn't deserve it. Well, then it wouldn't be grace, would it? Because grace is giving something to someone that they don't deserve. And so if a wife will be conscious about speaking words of respect, especially during times of those hardships, then you know what that can do? It can disarm his defenses, and it can open the door for emotional engagement. So what does it look like? What does respect look like? I would say that respect looks like proper communication. I believe in your leadership, okay? Much like what you were saying. I believe in your leadership. Even though we disagree right now, I believe in you. Or, I know you want what's best for our family. I know that. Could we talk through our differences and find a solution together? That's a key to conflict resolution. I think that's one of your topics later in this series. But could we talk about our disagreements? Here's another one. I appreciate how hard you work for us. Listen to what the Proverbs writer said in Proverbs 14:1. This wise woman builds her house, but the foolish tears it down with her own hands. Words are powerful. And so respect can build up. Disrespect tears down. Now let me talk to you for just a moment from a clinical perspective. One of my hobbies is neuroscience. I'm sort of a brain geek, and so I've got a bit of a background in neuroanatomy and psychopharmacology. So I know how your brain works, and I know how your brain works on drugs. And I know that your brain is the greatest drugstore that there is. And God gave you that drugstore. And so I want you to know that a guy's brain and a girl's brain, if you were just to take a look at it, if we were just to do something really gross and peel back the layers and just look, we would definitely see some similarities there. But there are a lot of differences. between the two. And what neurological studies have demonstrated is that men often experience a more intense physiological response to a perceived criticism, more so than women do. And during conflict, their amygdala region in their brain, which is connected to their limbic system, or part of their limbic system, which sits right on top of their brain stem. And their brain stem sort of organizes that fight, flight, freeze, faint, or fawn response, okay? When they hear something that they perceive as being critical, they are prone to emotional flooding. It's like, ladies, it's like you're on the attack. Even though you may not be on the attack, if they perceive that you're being critical or maybe hypercritical, they feel like they're on safari in the bush of Africa, and there is a lion. And if a lion is approaching, what are you going to do? I've been on safari a few times, and I was there with some students from Freed Hardeman last year, and I saw more lions than I've ever seen in my life in the Ngorongoro crater. And there was a lady lion. The guy lions, they don't bother me. It's those lady lions. They're the hunters. Those are the ones you need to watch out for. And there was a female lioness, walking right toward the truck. And I knew if she wanted to, she could have jumped right on top of that thing and come down into the top of it. We had the top raised so we could stand up and take good pictures. But thankfully, she just walked right by. Now, if you had been outside of this vehicle and Miss Lioness comes walking up, how are you going to respond to that? You're going to run. You're not going to shoot on safari, well, at least not in our group. But okay, so what I'm hearing there is you're going to run or you're going to fight. All right, if you choose to run, are you going to win? Now, if there are a couple of us there, I'm going to win because I promise you I'm going to run faster than you, all right? So I'm going to win. But Miss Lioness usually has a friend with her, and so neither one of us are going to win, okay? If I fight the lion, am I going to win? No, definitely not. If I freeze up, am I going to win? Probably not. If I pass out, am I going to win? No, easy prey. So in none of the above cases is it a good situation. Just like when we become critical, I keep saying we. I'm not a lady, I'm not a wife, but I just feel compelled as I'm up here speaking to say we. Anyway, when you become critical, and I mean hypercritical, there's nothing wrong with just general criticism, right? But if you become hypercritical, or if your tone is such that it is perceived to be hypercritical, then he's having a brain response that is just hard to overcome because he's more of a cortex focused, logical type thinker, okay? But it's hard for this to work when this thing back here is really heated up, okay? And so he just really struggles with this idea of being on the other side of hypercriticism, because now he feels like he's fighting a lion, okay? And so if you can consistently use words of honor and affirmation instead of being on the attack, then it's going to help him regulate his emotions, which allows him to connect better with you, allows him to empathize more with you, allows him to love more effectively in the way that you need to be loved. Now, can I just parenthetically say that I in no way am suggesting or would suggest that respect means to enable abuse. Because sometimes I find those situations presenting, okay, where we have an abusive spouse. Now, I can go both ways, but I'm speaking specifically about the women's role, and sometimes women struggle with showing respect because they are in an abusive relationship. And so I want you to know that respect does not mean that we enable sin. Respect does not mean that we endure manipulation, and respect certainly does not mean that we submit to being abused. Okay? Don't believe that God is calling women to suffer cruelty at all. So I want to just mention that by way of an observation. Now, love and respect. Do you think about your marriage as a ministry? You see, as Christians, I believe that life is a ministry. Emily and I stepped away from full-time local work where I was in the pulpit every Sunday preaching. I preached my first sermon when I was 8. When I was 16, I started going about preaching. When I was 18, I was preaching every Sunday. So from 18 until July of last year, 48 years of age, 30 years preaching every Sunday. So after 30 years, I stepped away from full-time local work to go to Freed-Hardeman and to be full-time faculty there and focus more on my counseling work. And I told Emily, I said, you know, when we leave local work and go to Freed-Hardeman, our ministry is not over. Ministry is just going to look a little bit different. And it's been a lot of fun. And I want all of us to appreciate the fact that whether we are in the pulpit or whether we're a professor at a Christian university or whether we're a family, a Christian family, it's about ministry. And love and respect is a powerful ministry. Listen to Proverbs 14:24. It says, an excellent wife is the crown of her husband. And in this context, respect is not just a gift, but it is a weapon. It's a weapon against shame, and it's a reflection of who Jesus makes you as a redeemed sister in Him. And the potential for powerful, positive change in a relationship. I want you to think about these things, ladies. And you can do this just in the privacy of your thoughts. You can journal this, or you can pray about this. And I recommend the latter. Think about, have I spoken disrespectfully or acted from a place of fear? Can I genuinely affirm my husband today? Could I do that? Could I model strength and dignity like the Proverbs 31 woman? And can I speak truth with grace? Think about those questions. Pray about those things. Ask God, the creator of the universe, to help you. All right, let me shift gears a little bit. I still want to stay in the area of the emotion, but I want to kind of build on it and talk some about attachment, okay? Attachment theory, which you've probably heard about, Ainsworth, go look up Ainsworth, attachment theory, be a great time studying that. But attachment theory emphasizes a fundamental human need, that we have secure connection, that we feel safe. I was listening to a story about a couple that went to counseling, and he was heavily into alcohol, an alcoholic. She was not, and their marriage was falling apart. Alcoholism was just destroying the relationship. And they go to counseling, and the counselor says to her, I want you to turn to him And I want you to tell him how his alcohol use makes you feel. That's a real counseling thing to say, isn't it? How does this make you feel? How does his alcohol use make you feel? And you know what she said? She said, it makes me feel afraid. Not angry, not mad, afraid. I'm afraid of what might happen to you. I'm afraid of what might happen to our kids. Maybe they'll grow up and they'll become alcoholics. Maybe they'll have difficult marriages. I'm afraid about whether or not you'll be able to keep working. I'm afraid that maybe we won't have food on the table. I'm afraid that this marriage might end, and I wanted it to be for life. I'm afraid. God said, it's not good that man should be alone. Genesis 2:18. And that doesn't mean that you just have a husband and wife living under the roof together. Do you know that you could have a husband and wife living under the same roof, seeing one another every day, but one or maybe even both have what we call perceived loneliness? Not actual loneliness, there are two people there, but it's the perception of being alone. And perceived loneliness and actual loneliness are horrible, not only for your mental health, but horrible for your physical health. I read one medical doctor who said that loneliness is equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day as far as what it can do to your physical health. Now, I'm not recommending that you go smoke 14 cigarettes a day, but I'm just saying that loneliness is not a good thing. Neither is anxious attachment. Healthy attachment, secure attachment is what we want to see in marriages. And both spouses experience emotional safety when you have a secure attachment. Each person in this partnership, this relationship, this marriage, will know that the other person is someone who is accessible, who's responsive, who's engaged. If you take me up on doing some studying about attachment theory, you're going to run across the name Sue Johnson, Dr. Johnson. And Dr. Johnson has lectured far and near about emotionally focused therapy, or EFT. And EFT is rooted in attachment theory, which suggests this about us, and that is, as people, we are wired to seek close, safe connections with others, particularly during times of stress or vulnerability. That's why when you have a couple that are struggling in their marriage, that if they find that attachment, if you will, outside of their marriage because someone is available, is responsive, is engaged, just to listen, it turns into what I've heard called electric conversations. And those electric conversations lead to the bedroom, lead to adultery. And so what we want in a marriage is we want to have a good, safe, healthy, secure attachment. And so for the wife, when you think about cultivating this, here's what it involves. Create safety in the way you express disappointment. Okay? Be mindful of your voice. Practice your own self-regulation. Speak gently to yourself and to your spouse. Be emotionally attuned. Respond to your husband's, what Dr. Gottman calls bids of connection. Small gestures, like sharing an interesting article that you're reading. That can deeper a meaningful conversation and connection. Now let's talk a little more about that communication. I just mentioned to you a fellow by the name of John Gottman, Dr. Gottman. Dr. John, Dr. Julie, they have spent their lives studying relationship dynamics. And anybody familiar with Dr. Gottman and his work? 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. Get that book. Great book. Great exercises in that book. Dr. Gottman and his associate, who had been doing some research on marriage relationships, they decided that to do their research, what they wanted to do is they wanted to set up a love lab. And so their love lab was an apartment. And I believe this was in Washington State, if I remember right. But they set up their love lab, an apartment, and they had a one-way glass. And so they would invite a couple that was struggling a bit to come to this apartment. And they would wear these electrodes so their heart rate could be monitored. And Dr. Gottman would say, when you come to this apartment, bring your favorite food, bring your favorite games, bring whatever makes you feel at home, and just spend the weekend. And just watch movies, talk, whatever you want to do. And so they would watch the couple through the one-way glass, and they would monitor their heart rate. And what was interesting is he would observe that it didn't take long for the couple just to act like normal. And so if they were fighting all the time, they would fight in Dr. Gottman's love lab. Okay? And through all of these years of research and spending this time watching and listening and monitoring couples, he was able to determine, after spending about 15 minutes with a couple, he was able to determine with greater than 90% accuracy whether or not a couple was going to divorce. What do you suppose are the most popular reasons for why couples divorce? Any idea? Finances? Lack of education? Religion? I think I heard adultery. Social media? Okay. A bell means I have 5 minutes, and so I got to talk a little more. But you guys have shared a lot of the reasons that many people say are the leading causes of divorce. But could I tell you that from Gottman's research, now Gottman's not God, obviously, but if you can predict greater than 90% in 15 minutes whether or not a couple is going to divorce, then I'm probably going to listen to you a little bit. And what Gottman said is that none of the reasons that you gave are the reasons for divorce. But the reasons for divorce are things like this. Number one, a harsh startup. That's when you have a couple that comes into the conversation with, hopefully it's safe to say this here, with guns a-blazing. But you know, when you come into that conversation, that communication, when both people are kind of on fire, you know who's going to elevate the situation the highest first? Ladies, I'm just speaking from research. It's you. So when you come into the argument, you're here, he's here. That speaks to the brain science a little bit too, doesn't it? So you're here, and then what do you think he's going to do if he doesn't just tuck tail and run? He's going to come up here. He's not going to meet you. He's going to beat you. I don't mean physically. He's going to, hopefully not. I'm a mandated reporter, so if that's the case, I need to, anyway. So he's going to come here. What are you going to do? He's not beating me. You're going to go up here. And it's a horrible cycle. But what we can do is, guys, intentionally come down here. Don't withdraw. but just intentionally come down here. She may go up a little bit. But research says that she's not going to keep going up. Okay? She may still be above, but she's going to start coming down a bit. Okay? So you just kind of keep working things down. By the way, that's a technique that you can use in other relationships in life. But harsh startup is the big one. Okay? That is a big predictor. Another one is what Dr. Gottman calls the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Let me see if I can remember them. Criticism. Talk about that earlier, right? Incessant criticism, we might say. Defensiveness. Man, I shouldn't have mentioned the 4 if I can't remember what all of them are. Criticism, defensiveness, stonewalling, and look it up. I can't remember the 4th one. Contempt, thank you. Yes. And then there are about 4 or 5 additional ones that Gottman mentions. And the last one, the most important, he says, is failed repair attempts. Failed repair attempts. Now, let's think very quickly. As we're talking communication, be mindful of the harsh startup. Let's do a soft startup. Now the why of that, love. Love. Speak love, the correct love language. 1 Corinthians 16:14 says, let all that you do be done in love. All right, here's another reference for you. Dr. Gary Chapman, 5 love languages. I was late coming to that party. Just found out about it just in recent years. He's written a whole series of books on love languages. But words of affirmation, acts of service, receiving gifts, quality time, physical touch. A lot of wives feel discouraged when they give love only to have it seemingly unreceived by their husbands. But often the issue isn't a lack of sincerity, but it's a matter of translation. Maybe you're not speaking his love language. You see, maybe you're engaged in acts of service to demonstrate love to him, but that's not his love language. Maybe his love language is physical touch. Maybe your love language is acts of service. In fact, what Dr. Chapman says is sometimes we love the other person the way that we want to be loved. Okay? So be mindful of how you are loving him. Are you loving him in your love language or his? I only have time to mention that, not develop it, unfortunately. Here's another one. Remember I said that Dr. Gottman mentioned this failed repair attempt is a major predictor of divorce? Consider the power of repair. Dr. Chapman wrote a book that I read not too long ago, and I recommend it to couples. It's called the apology language, the five love languages, the 5 apology languages. The 5 apology languages are expressing regret, accepting responsibility, making restitution, genuinely repenting, and requesting forgiveness. And what he's highlighting is the fact that not all apologies are received equally. You know, Ephesians 4:32 says, be kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another as God in Christ forgave you. And we genuinely want to do that. We want to forgive. But we're waiting for the apology. And you may be thinking, guys, well, I apologized. She didn't get it. Or ladies, you may be thinking, I apologized to him. He didn't get it. Because we're not speaking the right apology language. You see, expressing regret is one of the languages. I'm truly sorry for the pain I caused. Do you acknowledge the pain? Here's another one, accepting responsibility. I was wrong, and I take full responsibility for my actions. Is it a complete acknowledgement of the fact that I failed? Number 3, making restitution. What can I do to make this right? I think that's a powerful apology. Genuinely repenting, obviously. I understand how my actions hurt you, and I'm committed to changing this. And then finally, requesting that forgiveness. Quite specifically, will you forgive me? Discover your spouse's preferred apology language. And if you do, I believe that's invaluable. If you just say, I'm sorry, that might fall flat. What he may need is, how can I fix this? How can I fix this? Well, I think I'm out of time, and so let me go ahead and wrap up. We've got to build, ladies, we've got to build a legacy of love and respect. And your role as a wife is not passive. It's not insignificant. In fact, it's quite sacred. It's special. It's strategic. It's powerful. And so do what you can to help your marriage be biblically grounded in love and respect. Do some outside reading about emotional awareness, about attachment, about connection. Study and educate yourself on things that you can do to be rooted in good, healthy qualities for a wonderful, dynamic relationship. Proverbs 14:1. The wise woman builds her house, but with her own hands the foolish one tears hers down. Let's build up our marriage with love, respect, and unwavering faith. Let's speak life into our relationships. Let's create a legacy of grace and allow Jesus' power to change our marriage.